hear that toast. Maybe we do. I don't know. You wouldn't get a lot of the jokes. So, how you doing? My name's Luke, and I'm a lot of things. Currently, I'm a food truck driver. I've been a worship director. I've been a pastor. I've been a culinary instructor, and I've been a really rebellious teenager. So, take that as you will. But tonight, I'm just coming to kind of give you guys an idea of who I am and how I've grown with the Lord over my life in the last 31 years, which seems like a lot. Stories are one of the most important aspects of my life. I love telling stories. I think stories are told through art. I think stories are told through food, and I think stories are told through music, as well as 100 other different forms. But those are the three that I really enjoy the most. So what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to break down a couple different stories for you where God and I grew together. And these are really impactful times that changed my life. And there are three very distinct points in my life. And so that's kind of how this is loosely based. And if I go off on a tangent, I'm sorry. Zach and I joke when we're working on the food truck. We joke about how we start a conversation and then we'll get 3 customers. And then we'll do that thing, and then that conversation kind of gets lost. And then an hour and a half later, I'll be like, so anyways, the thing about the drywall is that, and he's like, where did that come from? And I'm like, it's a tangent. You know, you just gotta categorize, come back around and finish up those conversations. Okay, so first story. We're gonna call this one, this is like the come to Jesus moment. Has anybody ever had a come to Jesus moment? Nobody's ever had a come to Jesus moment. It's Sunday night in a church. Right. You're all liars. Sinners. I love it. It's me. So when I was 15 years old, my parents are both pastors. Now, you have 2 very distinct kinds of pastors' kids. You have the ones that become outstanding citizens, and then you have the ones that don't. Guess which one I was? Don't. So when I was 15, I was doing all the things that I shouldn't be doing. I was partying and doing drugs and other things, and it was really bad. And so, but I had a really good work ethic, so I got a job, and I really wanted a car so that I could be rebellious far away from where my parents were at. And I paid cash for this beautiful Honda Civic Del Sol. It had T-tops, it was red, and it was a stick shift, and I was in love with that car. I bought it when I was 15 and a half, before I had my driver's license. I would sleep in it. I was so excited about getting my driver's license. So, the day came, I got my driver's license, I passed my test with flying colors, and I started driving around and doing all the things. So the one night, as a celebration for my freedom, my best friend and I throw this party, and my ex-girlfriend shows up. Now, when you're 16, that's a big deal, right? She shows up not by herself, but with her new boyfriend. I was done. I was depressed and mad, and I drank myself into a very dangerous place. And then I did some other recreational things that took me to an even farther state of oblivion. I woke up in a bathroom wrapped around a toilet. Some girl was kicking me like I have to pee, and I'm like dead to the world. But I was really embarrassed because I really let myself go, and so I had these friends that were there at this party, and so on and so forth. And I said, no, that's too much detail. I'll tell you guys that later. Ask me afterwards if you want some really gross detail. It's very good, but it's not pertinent to the story. So I wake up the next morning feeling very embarrassed about my actions and just the whole state of the evening. And I was just like, I'm just going to get in my car and go. And I'm covered in my own pink vomit, and that's the detail. That's the thing. But I get in my car, and I'm driving this brand new car away, and I'm still a little bit out of it, and it's raining. I still remember Avril Lavigne on the radio. Don't judge me. She was something. And I hydroplaned, and I was going about 90 miles an hour, and I smashed into a guardrail. and I bounced off of the guardrail and slid another 150 feet and back into the correct lane. And I wasn't wearing a seatbelt, and my speedometer was stuck at this like 90-mile-an-hour thing. And I get out of my car, and the guardrail was knocked off of 2 of its posts. That's how hard I hit it. And I was like, I remember the impact. I remember the rain. I remember the song on the radio, but I didn't have a scratch on me. Now, I then took this long walk back to my friend's house because I had to do something about this. And on that walk, I had this realization of, I'm alive. And if you've ever had an experience where you feel like you were truly spared, you can have a couple different reactions to it. My reaction was that I believed, maybe for the first time in my life, actually believed that God had my back. And so that was a turning point for me. The other thing I learned that day was after we got the car towed, and it was very much totaled, and I got to the end of the day, and my father made me drive home, which was like a life lesson, like get back on the horse. So I'll never forget that too. That's a sidebar. Because we drove to the impound to clean out the car, and he's like, all right, driving home. I'm like, I'm not driving ever again. He's like, get the phone. Good dad. All right, so we're gonna fast forward a little bit there. So the end of that story was that it was at that point at 16 that I started to clean my life up. I felt that I had been spared and that God was giving me a chance. And not everybody gets these, what I call the metaphorical 2x4s to the back of the head, where God's like, hey, you're going down a path that you shouldn't be going. Not everybody gets that. And I felt like I was very fortunate to have that and to learn from that lesson. Did I get perfect overnight? No. Nobody does that overnight. But it got better. So years go by, I graduate high school, I go to college, I get a job. I burn out on my first corporate job, working for a big grocery store chain. I was way too young to be doing the things that I was doing, but it was really cool. And so I needed a find myself time. So in my early 20s, I sold everything I owned. All I owned was able to fit into the trunk of my car. You want to know how freeing that feels? I couldn't do that if you paid me now. But when you're 21, you don't have that much stuff. Sold everything I own. I traded my services as a chef with an organization in Seattle. Have you guys ever heard of YWAM? Okay, so YWAM is a mission organization that works with young people, and they do what are called DTS programs, which are like discipleship training programs, and then they send people out to do missions around the world. So I traded services with them. I said, I'll come be a chef for some of your camps if you give me a place to live and food. And they said, absolutely. So drove across the country to Seattle. Had an amazing experience there. It was a lot of fun. And about halfway through my time there, I had to make a decision of whether I was going to stay in Seattle and pursue my life there, or if I was going to come back home. And either decision would have been fine. I had made some friends and some connections there, so it would have been good. But I was still feeling I had changed my life and was living for the Lord to a perspective, but I didn't know why. All right, why am I doing the things that I'm doing? Why am I living this life other than, well, doing drugs gets you into car wrecks. Okay, so don't do that. So I needed perspective. So the one night, I had this, we'll call it an urge. I just felt like I was supposed to go for a walk. It was in the middle of the night. I left the base. I went for a walk on the beach. And, oh yeah, the base was on the beach in Seattle. Also kind of a drop. So I went for a walk on the beach. And I found this field. And I went and I felt like God was saying, Luke, go lay in the field. I'm not going to go lay in the field. Just go lay in the field. It's soaking wet. It's the middle of the night. Just go lay in the field. So I go and I lay in the field and I lay down. And I'm just staring up at the sky. Has anybody ever seen the movie The Lion King? Right? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? There's a scene where Mufasa comes back from like the dead, and he's in the clouds, and he's like, Simba, and he says, "You are my son." Now, it wasn't quite that dramatic, but who doesn't love a good Disney movie? I should have gotten clips, Zach. Don't do it. We're gonna keep rolling. That's a tangent. So in the movie Lion King, he comes back and he gives this word to his son, and even though mine wasn't as dramatic and the clouds didn't turn into a cool lion, I felt like God was telling me one very specific thing, and it was, "You are my son, and you have value." And the next thing that kind of came from that situation was that you have a family, but you also create family. And you are given community, but you also have to invest in community. And those things just blew my brain up, because it meant that intentionality with the people that were around me was important. It meant that where I decided to live was going to be important. And that if I was going to live my life honoring the Lord, that I needed to make that a priority. And sidebar, that's why we do church, right? So I decided to come home. I decided to be closer to where my family was. My parents are amazing people, and I wanted to be there. And so then over the next 10 years, I have tried my hardest to invest into people, because I wanted to not just have my physical family, which they're forced to love me, but to have a family that was something that I invest into and that people invest back into me. And that's kind of what community is. So let's skip another 10 years. So that was the moment. You are my son. We'll call it the Simba Mufasa moment. I worked in ministry for a while. I worked in restaurants for a while. I have had ups and downs, and I can tell you stories. Zach's only heard like 10% of them. Like, I can tell you stories about the highs and lows and the constant realization that, like, oh, yes, this is the person that I am, and this is the thing that I need to work towards. But most currently, and I call this chapter Ministry on a Food Truck. I think it could be a book. But after working in ministry and being an instructor for something that I'm passionate about, being food, and then working in restaurants, I was getting ready to turn 30, and I wanted to do something. And I didn't know what that thing was, but I wanted to take a risk and do something. And so I had always in the back of my head thought through, wouldn't it be cool to have a food truck? And not just because like food trucks are cool, but because you would have interaction with people on a daily basis, and then be able to express to them the passion in this art form we call food. Not that food is, there's no quotes around that, I don't know what to get that. But this passion around food, and be able to express that directly to that person. It's something that you lose when you're in a restaurant. When you're in a restaurant as the chef, like, you work your butt off all night long, you have a great night, and you don't have a single interaction with the customer. It's so frustrating, especially as a people person. But on a truck, you like make the thing, you hand it out to the person, and direct contact. It's awesome. So as I got into building the truck, there were learning curves in, launching the business, and then now growing the business. The thing that has been the coolest, most rewarding, most life-fulfilling thing that we get to do on a food truck is have interaction with people. So ministry doesn't just happen in a church, right? This is like an age-old tale. But to be able to have interaction with regular customers, to learn people's names, to learn their stories, it's a little bit more of a long haul in those relationships, because all they get to see about me is this customer and interaction, right? We're not having a deep conversation about where their faith is at, or what they believe or don't believe, or are they struggling with anything? Are they depressed? Are they not depressed? Are they happy? Do they have a good relationship with their father or their mother? Do they have any brothers and sisters? No, it starts with a very, very simple I'm gonna make you a sandwich that I really hope you enjoy. But now 2 years into that, the relationships that are growing, customer and food truck relationships, are very real. And it's amazing to get to go back to these spots every single week and get to have positive and loving interactions with those people. Now, I don't know what the end game is there. I don't know what this ministry's end result is. We don't have a mission statement yet, other than the food and the love and the passion that we put into the food and the care that we give to our customers. But there's something very, very tangible and real in what that is. And I think that in all aspects of our lives, whatever we end up doing, whether it's in school, whether it's in your job, whether it's in college, whatever you end up doing, if we do it with the mindset that every interaction that we have is a piece of ministry because we are representing Christ, then our worlds will drastically change. Whoa, okay, so then, how are we doing on time? We're good? Awesome, great. I'm going to tell another story. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to tell a story. That was all three. So I guess the conclusion that I have here, the thing that ties all three of these stories together for me, is that I constantly have this epiphany. And the epiphany is, we say things like, God met me here, or I met Jesus on a road, right? But the truth is that in each one of these stories, God was always there. I had to recognize that he was there. It was like my back was turned to him on so many different occasions, but he didn't abandon me. He was there. I was drunk and high in a car going way too fast while it was raining as a teenager. It wasn't that God wasn't there. I wasn't recognizing him being there. And it wasn't until something dangerous happened that I was able to open my eyes and be like, thank you, God, for saving my life. When I was in my 20s and I was trying to find myself somewhere, it wasn't that God had abandoned me. It was the fact that I wasn't recognizing what his purpose was for me. And when I turned around and was able to say, okay, God, I see you here. And now, on a daily basis, I have to remind myself to say, all right, God, where are we going today? And when you're on a 1979 GMC step van that constantly breaks down on you, you're always praying. So it's kind of a good reminder. So I wrote this thing down. I feel like it's a little bit cheesy, but I'm going to sing a song for us, which I'm assuming most of you know, so please do sing along. But my motto is to love like God loves us, right? That's the thing that it's simple. It's something that I strive for every day. I constantly forget, but I want other people to know as well, because what we gain from that is not, our lives aren't going to be perfect. We're not going to be the most successful or become this, that, or the other thing, or get everything that we want, but what we will gain is a perspective on life. And that kind of value, that's the purpose, right? That's why we're here. And also to tell stories. So I'm going to sing How He Loves, and yeah, I hope you guys sing with me. I also cut my finger this morning, so if I bleed on the guitar, I'm sorry. Wait a second. Let's do that. Is that in tune? He is jealous for me, and he loves like a hurricane. I am a tree, bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I'm unaware of these afflictions, eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And like a hurricane. I am a tree, bending beneath the weight of his wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions eclipsed by glory, and I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. And oh, how he loves us so. Oh, how he loves us. How he loves us so. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. Yeah, he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves us. Oh, how he loves. We are his portion, we are his prize, drawn to redemption by the grace in his eyes. And if grace is an ocean, we're all sinking. Then heaven meets earth like a sloppy wet kiss, and my heart turns violently inside of my chest. 'Cause I don't have time to maintain these regrets when I think about the way that he loves us. And oh, how he loves us. And oh, how he loves us. And oh, how he loves. Yeah, he loves us. And oh, how he loves us. And oh, how he loves us. And oh, how he loves. All right, what's next?